Alright, legends, welcome to Hellmouth Hotline. I'm your host, Rodney Stewart. Yes, I'm kind of self conscious on this podcast episode because I'm putting this out as a live stream over on the review channel on YouTube. Doing my best to get back into the way of going. So, if you've been listening to this podcast, I'm sorry it hasn't been out for a while, but we're back to it now, and we're getting into Angel season 1 with the episode The Bachelor Party. This here is a much better episode than you give it credit for at the very beginning. You think it's going to be one of these ones that's going to be boring, but it turns out to be good. There's a good bit of comedy in there as well, and everything that happens throughout this episode. Having said that, it's a very emotional one for Doyle's character. We start to get a little bit, we very swiftly get his backstory, really. And this episode kind of just brings everything together. You already know he's a half demon, so, he's always had the crush on Cordelia as well. At the beginning of this episode, Doyle, he's trying to get Angel to get out of his books and go out on the town to get sidetracked from everything that they're doing. But Cordelia, of course, arrives, and he turns into his awkward self again when he sees her. She's wearing this evening dress. She's ready for a night out on the town, and her date is going to meet her at Angel Investigations. This guy Pierce, he arrives, and Angel starts to interrogate him and ask him where they're going, when she's going to be back, doing the big brother thing, kind of just really to kind of annoy her more than anything else. But Doyle and some distress at the hopelessness of his own case with Cordelia. Doyle sits on the sofa in the office, and he's leafing through one of Angel's books, and a photo of a blonde girl slips from between the pages. Of course, Doyle, he picks it up and he whistles, kind of like a hottie. And he asks Angel, is this an old squeeze? Would you be interested in dating a man with an Irish accent? But, seeing the look on Angel's face, of course we know who it is as soon as we see the photograph. Doyle catches it straight away, realises it's Buffy, and starts to apologise. But at that moment, he is struck by another vision. Just whenever he's got his foot in his mouth already and messing up with Cordelia, he gets a vision. Off they go to track down some vampires. There's a guy who's been captured by them. So off they go. We cut over to a restaurant, upscale. The Cordelia finds herself bored to tears with this guy, Pierce, that she's out on a date with. And he's just talking about trading and all the money he makes and whatnot, and how exciting it is for him. But she's bored to death. She entertains herself by imagining what her fellow team members are doing. Angel and Doyle cut back to them there in the midst of a battle in a vampire nest. I'm sorry, guys, I'm getting totally sidetracked with my notes here. I'm trying to keep track of where I'm at. They arrive just in time to save the victim. Angel mentions to Doyle, you've are reluctant to morph into your demon half. You're stronger as a demon. Why don't you just, whenever you're fighting, switch to demon mode and you'll be far stronger. But Doyle is kind of like, he's still not comfortable with that side of himself, and that comes out in this episode as well. Angel takes the guy home, the guy that he just rescued, make sure he gets home safely, and he sends Doyle back to the office. But as they're leaving, this big mean looking vampire emerges from hiding. Yes, they haven't got all the vampires. Unaware that he's been followed, Doyle lets himself into the office while hunting. The hunting vampire also observes Cordelia's arrival. Moments later, this is the guy that survived the nest clean out. This guy Pierce drops Cordelia off early because she claims to be not feeling the best, and I've got a headache. I need to go home, but just drop me off at my office here. My car's here and whatnot. So, Pierce is going through the awkward small talk that you do on a date. Cordelia can't get out of there quick enough, but just as she gets out, the guy, he's like, you need to be careful. I'm not sure about this part of the town. At that point, the vampire steps out and he goes, yeah, that's crappy. At which point, this guy screams, runs in terror, jumps into his car, tears off, leaves Cordelia on her own to face this vampire. Cordelia, she's struggling to get away from him. And suddenly Doyle appears in the front steps with a crossbow and the hero attitude. Taking his only shot, Doyle sends the bolt into the vampire's foot, then engages in hand-to-hand as a deranged vampire throws Cordelia rolling onto the sidewalk. He yanks free and roars to attack, and outmatched, Doyle still refuses to morph into his demon face, particularly because he doesn't want Cordelia to know that he is half demon. So he's up against it in this fight in a major way, but he manages to get his crossbow bolt, the arrow, whatever you want to call it, and manages to kill the vampire with it. So Cordelia is impressed by what Doyle just done. So the next day, she's talking to Angel, and her evolving attitude towards Doyle, and she's coming to the conclusion that Doyle might actually have some good potential, and at least deserves to be treated like a human as a thank you for saving my life gesture. She's going to take him out for a coffee and whatnot. So Angel, he's kind of, he already knows that Doyle has a mad crush on Cordelia, and he's kind of keeping it under wraps, but he's kind of like, what, this might happen for them. But yes, Cordelia finds Doyle in the outer office, and she's just about to bring it up to go for a coffee together, and a young woman opens the front door, and she's standing there and she's smiling at Doyle. So at the moment in the series, when you're starting to see that swing back from Cordelia towards Doyle, there might be some romantic notions here and whatnot. This woman turns up, and we find out that this is indeed Doyle's wife. So she calls him Francis. Stunned, Doyle introduces him. He introduces her as his wife. Angel's just come out of the inner office, and another guy comes in. This guy, Richard, enthusiastically, he starts shaking Angel's hand, and he's believing him to be Doyle. So he's like, after being set straight, Richard turns to Harry. Harry, this is Doyle's ex-wife, and mentions the wedding. So of course he's completely blasted out, which he didn't want him to say at this point. And so Cordelia, she goes into classic Cordelia mode here, and she's like, scandal, and she's ready to take it on. But Angel gets hold of her and takes her to the room. This guy Richard goes back out to wait, and when they're alone, Harry presents divorce papers to Doyle, and he says he'll have to have his people look through the documents and make sure he's not buying anything, So later, Doyle declines Angel's offer of a shot of scotch and explains that his demon side genes he inherited from his father that he'd never met, and they didn't manifest until he turned 21. And at this point, he and this girl Harry had already married, and she eventually left him because he wasn't the man she married anymore. So Doyle then speculates about the real story behind Richard's friendly face, and he gets Angel to go and investigate this guy. So Angel is like, no problem, I'll do that for you, but don't tell Cordelia, she just want to charge you for it. So Angel follows Harry's fiance, and he spots him making what looks to be an illegal exchange, and then slipping into a steakhouse with the package. And inside the restaurant, Richard hides the small package in the industrial sized refrigerator they've got in the back. Harry arrives soon after. She's got stacks of department store boxes tied together with twine. Richard, he goes into the storage area, selects this bottle of sparkling wine. They're going to have what seems to be a romantic evening together. But of course, Angel's outside keeping an eye on all this. And just as Richard approaches Harry from behind, he morphs into a demonic appearance. So at this, Angel crashes through the big window, tackles him to the ground, lands a few punches on him. He realises that Richard isn't fighting back and that Harry is shouting at him to stop. So Angel's confused, and to his confusion, it seems Harry knows that Richard is a demon, and at that point, having obtained a degree of ethnodemonology, I want to say, ethnodemonology. I wrote that word down in my notes so I could make sure that I could say it. Now I'm trying to say it, I don't think I'm saying it right. So it turns out Harry has a degree in ethnodemonology. She's a demonologist. She doesn't hunt demons, she studies them. So Richard is a benevolent demon. The knife that he hid, also lifted a knife, morphed into the demon. Of course, this was Angel, thinks he's going to kill her, but this was to cut the ribbons on the boxes that she just brought in, and he was actually in an illegal food item they serve at the restaurant, which was the deal that Angel's seen going down in the street. So yeah, Angel kind of questions her. He's confused because Doyle told him that they had split because she couldn't accept him for his demon half. And she says, well, she did freak initially. That she quickly adjusted to the idea of Doyle's demon heritage, quicker than Doyle did himself, and actually encouraged Doyle to explore that side of himself. But he couldn't accept himself. He refused. And Harry tells Angel that her first husband just shut down and withdrew and became pretty much a bitch to live with. So yes, it's a bit of a twist in the story we weren't expecting at this point, but it is what it is. So back at the Angel investigations, Doyle, he rants about the type of demon Richard and their rituals must be dangerous. However, Angel reads about how anamorphic demons give up all rituals and now just own a chain of restaurants. So yeah, Doyle, he's trying to find every excuse under the sun not to trust this guy. Doyle finally accepts that it wasn't his demon half that broke him and Harry up, but it was his own personality flaws that did it. That's a good lesson to learn if you're thinking about getting married, because you only think you have it down until you actually try it, and it's not easy, let me tell you. So yeah, later Doyle signs the divorce papers, and at this point he's just like, I can't make her happy. I didn't make her happy. Maybe this guy can make her happy, so the best thing I can do is let her be happy. That's his line of thinking in this episode. So he signs the divorce papers. He hands them over to Harry. Richard's there. He's looking on. She excuses herself to go to make some copies in the photocopier, and Richard takes the opportunity to invite Doyle to his bachelor party. He wants Doyle to give him his blessing to the new union. Meanwhile, in Angel's office, Harry invites Cordelia to the bachelorette party, explaining that Richard's family is very sweet and into all good vibes, but Cordelia is the first woman that she's met under the age of 300. So, um, at the party that night, the family assembles at the dining table for dinner. Where, no, sorry, I've jumped ahead in my notes. They do gather around the dinner table, the Stranley home. That's Richard's family home. Uh, they're around the dining table for dinner, passing around a bucket of chicken. They finalise the plans for Richard's party. A lot of the beverage choices go without saying. There's some discussion about what food, buffalo wings, foie gras, activities, stripper, whatever, that sort of year. What would be best to complement the ritual eating of the ex-husband's brains. So, yes, it's not going to be as straightforward as Doyle thinks, or anybody thinks at this point. So, Richard's family is surprised and troubled when Doyle brings Angel along to the bachelor party at the restaurant. He wasn't invited. Doyle brings him anyway. Richard begins softening Doyle up, hoping to eventually elicit his blessing. So all he wants him to say is, I bless you, I bless your union and whatnot. And this is, in their culture, which is going to be good enough to say, okay, he's giving me his blessing. That means it's okay to eat his brains. So he spends the whole party trying to get Doyle to say this. And Doyle does pretty quickly, and he does go over the thing about, I didn't make her happy, maybe you can, so whatever. The only thing I can do now is to step back and let her be happy. So meanwhile, at the Stranley home, Harry, she's following Cordelia and a little about Doyle's past, alluding to prior to the relationship, the qualities that first attracted her to Doyle. And Cordelia is, she's blown out of the water to learn that Doyle got his teaching credentials at a young age, taught third grade, and all while married to Harry. And she's less surprised to hear that Harry met Doyle at a food bank. And Cordelia points out that's more like the Doyle that I know and love. And she realises that Harry meant he was volunteering there. Back in the living room, Richard's mother calls out to them and it's time to play pornographic Pictionary. So, yes, Harry says, their ways are not our ways. So back at the bachelor party, Angel leaves Doyle unattended to investigate why Richard's relatives, Ben and Nick, are retreating into the back room, and he overhears Uncle John performing some kind of blood rite, and he phones Cordelia to ask Harry for a translation of the incantation that he's just heard. So as Angel hangs up and turns away from the phone, these guys jump out on him. Four demons kick the living crap out of him and toss him out a second story window, and he hits the ground unconscious. Back in the party, the strippers at it. After the dance finishes, Richard gets Doyle at the bar and asks him whether he's going to give any thought to blessing the proposed union. So Doyle decides to not stand in the way, as I say, and he gives him his blessing. So hearing the announcement that consent has been given, the rest of the family swarm Doyle and they lock him into this wheeled box thing that, if you've seen really old movies where the guys get into the steam box sort of a thing, exactly like this here. So it's just his head sticking out of this box, the rest of them's trapped in there. So Uncle John gives Doyle an injection to numb his head and then draws a dotted line across his forehead. So Doyle tries to take back his blessing, but Richard's uncle tells him that the blessing can't be rescinded. Doyle shouts for Angel, but the ritual proceedings continue uninterrupted. Now, there's a good bit of comedy at the end of this episode whenever he's in this box and he's trying to take the ritual back, and Richard, he comes in and he's like, I'm not sure I want to eat your brains anymore. And Uncle John is like, you'll eat his brains, apologise to your friend. And he's like, I'm so sorry, I would love to eat your brains. So it's silly little comedy they got. So we cut back out into the alley. Angel, he of course regains consciousness, vamps up, and just as Richard's about to cut on the Doyle's skull, Angel busts into the restaurant, destroying the front door. Richard's brothers question why Doyle brought a vampire to a bachelor party, and Doyle smiles and nods while Richard's relatives mob Angel and they start this huge fight in the restaurant. So while all that's going on, Harry and Cordelia, they have worked out what's happened, and they've translated it part of the ritual, but one of the aunts accidentally gives it away. So they run to the party to try and stop what's going to happen here. So they turn up in the middle of this fight and breaks everything up. At this point, Doyle has finally gone full demon mode. You know, he's morphed into the green face and like the spikes in his face and neck, and just the spikes everywhere. It's like a green hedgehog, and he's beaten all around him, giving as good as he's getting. And Cordelia turns up along with Harry. They break up the fight. She's never seen Doyle in demon form before, so she starts beating him down with a tray. So she beats him down into the corner, and she turns around to check something out, and Doyle pops up, morphed back into human form, and Cordelia automatically is like, oh my goodness, what have they done to you? Look at your head and all this bruise after her beating the face off him. So yes, Harry gets into it with Richard, and Richard admits that he was just trying to follow the old ways. Uncle John says that these rituals are still important to them, and she mockingly asks him, when was the last time that you tore yourself away from TV long enough to spill the blood of a she-goat? So Harry tells Richard that, you know how I feel about these barbaric customs, but Richard tells her that his family won't allow the marriage unless he performs the ritual. So Harry turns around, she looks at Doyle before turning back to her and looks in Richard's eyes. She takes him by the hand and then pulls her hands away, leaving the engagement ring on his palm. So Harry turns and she snaps at Doyle, and she says she'd eat his brains if he says anything. So she storms off, and Doyle kind of smugly leaves then. So at the end of the episode, Angel and Cordelia watch Doyle mope in the outer office, and Cordelia points out that Doyle's still pretty hung up on Harry, and Angel, he agrees, saying that Doyle didn't even know how much he was. So Cordelia says someone needs to go out there and cheer him up. So Angel's like, oh, mopey, gets up to do it, and she's like, Cordelia stops him saying, it needs to be someone with an actual heartbeat. So she goes out to Doyle and she asks if he's going to become a loser pining guy, because we've already got one of them. So both Doyle and Angel take that sarcastic offence to it. So Cordelia continues saying that Angel can actually pull the attitude off. So he sits down and tells Doyle that he'll get through it because he's a nice guy, and he asks if she really thinks he is a nice guy, and she confirms it. So suddenly Doyle has, at the very end of the episode, and you knew it was coming at the very beginning whenever you had that flash of the photograph of Buffy, the vision comes in, we see it, he recognises Buffy from Angel's photo, and she's fighting a vampire. Angel asks what he saw. Doyle hesitates to answer, and we cut to the credits. So that was a tasty little episode. I really do enjoy Angel. I think for me, between Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, I far prefer Angel over Buffy. So yes, if you've never took time to check that series out, I would highly recommend you do it. So that's going to do it for this podcast episode, guys. I hope you did indeed enjoy it, and hopefully I'll be back on Friday with, I think, Friday the 13th. So I'll talk to you all then. This has been a production of Coins Age Media. Thank you so much for listening.